Well, the body is an extraordinary harmony between, I don't know, 30 or 40 trillion cells working in diverse ways, so to speak, but in harmony such that it presents as one living person, one consistent and governed body. Extraordinary. The astral person, body, the sort of what I might term your spirit, but in particular I mean your desires and aversions, need also to be in an extraordinary consistent harmony. I mean, for instance, you might have a aversion to heights, desire for thrills, and a desire for safety, and aversion to death. Well, they might be a bit inconsistent, you know, that you get thrills by jumping off of mountains with parachutes, but you hate heights and you don't want to get killed if the parachute doesn't hold you up, and so forth. So we can have certain desires and certain aversions that are not making a harmonious unity. The obvious one in there is avoid thrills. There may be a certain pleasure and desire in getting thrills out of doing silly things like extreme sports and so on. But it's very damaging to the person, damaging to the other desires. They're not consistent. And in total, you probably would rather not die and not deliberately suffer dangerous places, you know, high spots and so on. And so your desire for thrills starts to be dampened somewhat, and you get more reasonable. A desire not to die might be consistent with a set of desires to eat properly, not take risks, and so forth. Similarly, on the mental plane, thoughts may be chaotic, may have an inability to reason, conceptualize, and hold much to consistency and rationality at all. And that too needs to be perfected, you know, and who knows, perhaps a sophistication equal to the astonishing sophistication of the body. You know, we're a complex of so many thoughts and concepts, and all of which need to contribute to a consistent whole, assuming reality is consistent. And in large measure we still believe it to be so. In order to exist, I guess. If it were not consistent, I think, if reality were not consistent, then I think we would have well, a bit like a contradiction, an obliteration of, there'd be gaps in our reality. There are gaps in our understanding, of course, of reality. We can't see why such and such happens or why such and such doesn't happen. It doesn't seem to be consistent with what the other things imply. And because we basically do believe that the universe is consistent, we keep at it to see what we're misunderstanding about the truth, not that we've gained the truth, that it's inconsistent. Perhaps that's one of the objections to modern science, in that at times it departs from this principle, and because it's mystified as to what the rules are, it declares that some things are random. And other things are unverifiable, because trying to verify it will change the outcome. Which may be true at our present level of sophistication, but it doesn't necessarily infer that the universe departs from the consistent, the rational, the predictable, and the causal at the subatomic level. Much more likely that we got it wrong. And if we don't believe this, then we won't seek to see what may be right. We'll just write it off as, well, that's an area that is not going to be open to verification, so it's up for conjecture. And our conjecture is the following, because we like that picture and it seems to explain things rather well. Or at least it explains why we can't explain it. But of course, in a sense, yes, ignorance always explains why we can't explain it. The whole point of science is to overcome the ignorance. But to return to the notion of the physical, the astral, or if you like, the emotional, and the mental, aspects of our being, bodies, if you like, spheres, one sphere within another, and so on. You might think of the body as being the outside visible sphere, and within is the astral, within that the mental, perhaps within that the spiritual presence of, the domain of the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, and God and loved ones within there, that too. Or you may think of it in a reverse way, that there's the body surrounded by an astral light and some overawing mental causal body, and above that, and beyond that, well, a bit like looking out into the night sky, the space, the empty space, not empty at all, but the very substance of God, except the word substance is ridiculously more material than what I really want to say. But certainly not empty, certainly not nothing, certainly not a void. But the vast potential of God's personhood, apparently unbounded. Well, to be practical, chaos in the mental field, for instance, results in all sorts of emotional impact and consequences that we might call mental illness, really. And rightly so, in that the mental chaos is being manifested as emotions and drives that seem to be very antithetical to our society, culture, and fellowship, harmony. Similarly, chaos in the emotional field, the astral field, so to speak, have repercussions in the physical, in the form of illnesses and maladies and strains and stresses and presses and wrenches and weaknesses and disease, inability to resist disease, the immune system getting corrupted or weakened and so forth. So that the cause of some diseases, at least, is not directly a consequence of some other material cause, but of an emotional upset, say, or an astral imperfection. And the mental imperfection, by which we mean, well, pure misunderstanding, inconsistencies, chaos of thought, not understanding, not grasping, can have very unsettling effect. Lack of faith, lack of trust, lack of hope, lack of joy, and so on. Fears in the emotional realm, in the astral person, and that in turn can cause what Steiner calls shadows on the physical person, so that again we're manifesting various physical maladies. But the cause is actually mental. There's causal here, causal chaos. So we can imagine, can't we, that without the astral body and without the mental body, and equally we could say the same for spiritual body beyond that, what we might call the kingdom of heaven, physical body tick over very well. But like the animals, disease is not that common. There are diseases caused by physical consequences. But, birds live with stress that they could be caught or eaten at any time, but you would think that would be a stress, but they don't seem to be. They are guarded, they're always on the lookout, but they don't seem to manifest illness as a consequence of this sort of stress. Maybe they're not actually having it. They don't actually have emotions and desires. They have reactions to the environment. So they breed at the right time and they fly off and go places in the right way at the right time. And they satisfy the material needs of the body, hunting for food and so forth. Not actually experiencing an astral emotional, I prefer this, I object to that, I want this and I don't want that. I feel this, I feel that. It certainly recognise danger, and the noise they make suggests that they have fear. So I would argue they certainly have at least the rudiments of the astral body. It might not be as sophisticated as ours, but it seems to be there, doesn't it? Just as you can see an animal does actually think. He's looking at something, his head goes on one side, the dog moves. What is that? He's trying to fathom it out. You call him, he comes. You know, he's associated in his mind, that call means so and so. I mean, I don't think it's a straight physical reaction, it's a bit more sophisticated than that. So, some people living basically on the physical plane don't feel very emotional at all. We're quite happy to be eating and doing sport, physical things and so on, physical activity, eating, sleeping and going on holiday. Not terribly emotional. Others pretty emotional, but not very rational. Chaotically emotional, perhaps, or very good emotionally, but not great thinkers. Simply have a good, consistent, sophisticated, well-balanced astral body, if you like, or emotional setup. You may desire things that are consistent and actually reasonable with the physical realities of the world they're in and the other constraints. And they work very well. But on the mental plane, very inconsistent. But not to the extent that it's bringing disease in the astral, and therefore disease in the physical, perhaps. It may be that we perfect one, like the physical body, and then move on to perfecting the astral body, and then move on to trying to perfect. I don't think so. I think we might jump. We might be in the physical very much realm, reach out to the spiritual, somehow get it right, which helps the mental, especially, religions present what you think, not just spiritual things, and bring some sort of consistent worldview. You might not think it's the right one, but because there are so many different religions, but perhaps a consistent enough worldview to mean that the mental state is, not handicapped by the spiritual chaos. And that may well leave the mental sphere to perfect itself, and therefore not invade upon the astral, and likewise the astral benefits from such mental causal influence and a harmony with God, that it doesn't therefore generate diseases. There's no sin, if you like, in the spirit that would cause physical disease and disharmony, although there might be something in the material world that can still do it, like getting shot, famine and so on. There are outside influences that can be damaging to the body, not just influences from inside, from the astral, causal and spiritual incompletenesses. View is always incomplete. We're running with the theory that we feel most comfortable with, that seems to contribute much to what we seem to have experienced. But it's still got holes in it and inconsistencies, and we know that. We are not worshipping the theory. We don't say, this is truth. I've found it, eureka. You're probably wrong. Even Newton, who's survived so long with his laws, seems to be under attack now at the subatomic level. But it's been a good story. And in a technological way, it's been incredibly valuable to us, hasn't it? It was a good theory. Can we do better now? We don't know. We're in a world of uncertainty always. We believe in our hearts, we choose to believe that the universe is consistent, rational, logical. Why it should be blessed with such an incredible character without there being a God? Oh well, it's just a mystery, we don't know. Or as the Buddhist says, the Buddhist religion says, well, it's just never-ending cycles. It's always been here. It's always been so. Don't ask. That's the short-circuit God. Why does man do this? Well, mistakenly, he thinks it gives him a freedom. But it doesn't sound like a freedom to be condemned to another million incarnations to make the next major step. It's not my ideal by any means.